Buddha once shared a truth that lingers beyond time. You will not be punished for your anger, but by your anger. These words carry a weight that echoes through every moment of frustration, every spark of resentment that takes root in the heart. But how do we move beyond these emotions? How do we cultivate the kind of inner tranquility that remains unshaken by life's inevitable challenges? There exists a path, a way of being, that invites us to move through life as if nothing disturbs us, not in a way that suppresses emotions, but in a way that transcends them. The teachings of Buddhism offer a guiding light on this journey, a wisdom that is not just heard, but lived. To begin, we turn to the art of listening, a skill often underestimated. The world teaches us to speak, to assert, to express. But true understanding is found in the space where we listen more than we speak. To listen is to engage, to step into another's world without judgment or interruption. It is an act of deep presence. The Buddha once spoke of this in a way that stays with us. To understand everything is to forgive everything. In these few words lies a key to human connection. When we listen, not just with our ears, but with our entire being, we step beyond the limitations of our own experiences. We see others not as separate, but as reflections of the same emotions, fears, and hopes that we carry within ourselves. To listen deeply is to allow wisdom to emerge not just from books or teachers, but from life itself. The rustling of leaves, the stillness of the night, the silence that speaks between words. Everything around us becomes a teacher when we learn to truly listen. In doing so, we open ourselves to a greater perspective, one that brings not just knowledge, but peace. But peace is easily disturbed when we give others power over our emotions. In life, we encounter voices that seek to shape us, opinions that press against our choices, expectations that try to steer our path. It is easy to be swayed, to let the words of others dictate our direction. Yet the Buddha reminds us, do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. Life is a journey through an endless forest, where countless paths unfold before us. If we listen too much to the voices around us, we lose sight of our own path. It is natural to seek approval, to consider advice, but there is a fine line between guidance and surrendering our own direction. Just as a traveler does not hand over his map to a stranger, we must not let others define our purpose. The journey is ours to take. To walk it with certainty is to embrace our own wisdom, our own choices, without fear of judgment. And yet, no journey is free of hardship. Life flows like a river, sometimes gentle, sometimes raging, always unpredictable. The Buddha offered a powerful insight. Pain is certain, but suffering is optional. These words reveal a profound truth. While we cannot avoid difficulties, we can choose how we respond to them. To expect a life without hardship is to expect the ocean without waves. But to be prepared, to accept the impermanence of all things, is to find a steady ground, even in the midst of chaos. It is not about expecting the worst, nor is it about living in fear of what may come. Rather, it is about carrying the understanding that challenges will come, and when they do, we will not be broken by them. Acceptance is not weakness. It is not surrender. It is the realization that by embracing life as it is, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. We do not waste energy resisting the inevitable. Instead, we flow with it, like water adapting to the shape of the land. And so we arrive at a truth that many fear: failure. To fail is to be human, yet so many of us treat it as an enemy, a shadow that follows us with shame. But the Buddha's words remind us, each morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most. Failure is not the end of the journey. It is part of the path itself. When a child learns to walk, they fall countless times. Yet never do they stop to think, I have failed too many times. I should give up. They rise, they try again. And with each fall they grow stronger. Life is no different. To fall is not to be weak, but to learn. A sculptor does not create a masterpiece without first chiseling away at the stone. Every mistake, every setback is another stroke in the shaping of who we are. To fear failure is to fear progress, but to embrace it, to see it as a teacher, is to walk boldly, knowing that every misstep is still a step forward. And yet, in our striving, in our endless reaching, we must remember one thing: simplicity. The world is filled with distractions, complexities that pull us in countless directions. But the Buddha reminds us, the way is not in the sky. The way is in the heart. Imagine life as a garden. Within it grow many flowers, some vibrant, some fading. We often spend our days tending to everything, trying to keep every flower alive, every path clear. But not all things require our attention. Some things must be let go so that what truly matters can flourish. Simplicity is not about having less. It is about needing less. It is about recognizing what truly nourishes us and releasing what burdens us. A sky full of stars is vast and infinite, yet each star shines simply, without effort. When we declutter our minds and our lives, we find that clarity and peace are already there, waiting beneath the noise. And in this simplicity, we discover the greatest strength of all: humility. The Buddha once said, "A man is not called wise because he talks and talks again, but if he is peaceful, loving and fearless, then he is in truth called wise." True wisdom is not found in boasting, nor in the need to be right. It is found in stillness, in quiet strength, in the ability to listen, to love, to move without fear. A tree does not proclaim its wisdom, yet it shelters those beneath it. The ocean does not need to announce its depth, yet it holds the secrets of the world. Humility is not weakness. It is the mark of those who have nothing to prove because they have already found peace within themselves. It dissolves the barriers of pride and allows us to connect, to truly see others, to understand, to walk with compassion. And so, we must also be wary of the illusions of fortune. The Buddha reminds us, health is the greatest gift, contentment the greatest wealth, faithfulness the best relationship. The pursuit of wealth, of status, of material success can be a dangerous path. These things, while not wrong in themselves, are fleeting. What is gained today may be lost tomorrow. True wealth is not in possessions, but in contentment. It is in the laughter of loved ones, in the warmth of the morning sun, in the stillness of a quiet moment. To seek happiness in things is to chase the wind. But to seek it in presence, in faithfulness, in gratitude, that is to find something lasting. These teachings, these simple yet profound truths, are a compass through life. They are not just words to be heard, but lessons to be lived. They remind us that peace is not a destination, but a way of being. That wisdom is not something outside of us, but something we uncover within. And so, as you walk your path, let these truths not just be lessons, but a way of life. The world will change, challenges will come, but through it all, the wisdom of presence, of simplicity, of compassion will remain. May your days be filled with clarity, kindness, and the deep, unshaken peace that can only be found within. Life is a river, constantly flowing, never the same in any given moment. The Buddha's teachings remind us that everything changes: our joys, our sorrows, the people we love, even our very thoughts. To resist this truth is to create suffering, for nothing stays, and yet we cling. We hold onto moments, onto emotions, onto identities that no longer serve us, fearing the unknown that change brings. But what if, instead of resisting, we learned to move with the current? A great deal of suffering arises, not from what happens to us, but from our attachment to how we think things should be. We expect people to remain the same, relationships to be constant, circumstances to unfold in the way we desire. And when they do not, we feel lost, betrayed by the unpredictability of life. But the river does not grieve when a leaf floats past. The sky does not mourn the clouds that drift away. They simply continue, embracing the impermanence of all things. The Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." In these words lies the key to inner peace. The past is a memory, the future a dream. Only this moment is real. Yet how often do we truly live in it? How often do we allow ourselves to be fully present, without the weight of yesterday or the worry of tomorrow? When we learn to surrender to what is, rather than lament what was or fear what may be, we find a stillness that is unshaken by the winds of change. We see that we are not separate from the flow of life, but part of it. And yet, despite this understanding, we often allow our emotions to control us. Anger, fear, envy, these feelings arise like storms, sudden and consuming. The Buddha reminds us, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. How often do we replay old wounds, carrying resentment in our hearts long after the moment has passed? How often do we let a single harsh word linger in our minds, turning it over again and again, giving it more power than it ever deserved? But what if, instead of reacting, we simply observed? What if we watched our emotions rise and fall like waves on the ocean, knowing they would pass if we did not hold on to them? To master our emotions does not mean to suppress them. It means to understand them, to recognize their impermanence, to see them for what they are, passing clouds, not the sky itself. And in doing so, we free ourselves. Yet even with mastery of the mind, we must also master the heart. The Buddha teaches that just as a candle cannot burn without fire, men cannot live without a spiritual life. Spirituality is not found in distant temples or sacred texts alone. It is found in how we live, in how we treat others, in the kindness we extend without expectation. It is in the moments we choose love over hatred, patience over frustration, generosity over greed. It is easy to speak of compassion, but true compassion is tested in the face of difficulty. Can we still be kind when others are cruel? Can we still forgive when we have been wronged? Can we still love even when love is not returned? To live spiritually is to live with awareness, not just of ourselves, but of the world around us. It is to see beyond the surface, beyond the illusion of separateness, to understand that in hurting another, we hurt ourselves, that in giving, we receive, that in letting go, we find freedom. And yet, even as we walk this path, there is another great illusion that must be overcome, the illusion of control. We plan, we strategize, we shape our lives as if we can command the world to obey our will. And when it does not, we despair. We curse fate. We resist what is. We fight against the very nature of existence. But the Buddha reminds us, you only lose what you cling to. To control is to clutch at the wind, to demand certainty from a world that is ever-changing. But to surrender, not in defeat but in trust, is to finally be free. It is not about giving up on our dreams, nor is it about accepting suffering as fate. It is about moving with life rather than against it. About understanding that just as the river carves its path through stone, life unfolds as it must. And so, as we walk this path, we begin to see the truth, not as something spoken, not as something read, but as something lived. Peace is not found in reaching a destination. It is found in the way we travel. The journey itself is the answer. The mind is like a garden. Whatever we plant within it grows. The Buddha's teachings remind us that thoughts shape our reality, that what we nurture within ourselves eventually manifests in our actions, in our words, in the very energy we bring into the world. But most people do not tend to their inner gardens. They allow weeds of doubt to take root, vines of fear to climb higher, shadows of resentment to spread like overgrown branches. And then they wonder why peace seems so distant. To cultivate peace is to cultivate awareness. The Buddha once said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought." If we constantly feed our minds with negativity, with self-doubt, with comparison, then our experience of life will reflect that. But if we plant seeds of gratitude, of presence, of compassion, then our reality shifts. The world outside does not change, but how we see it does. And yet, even as we cultivate the mind, there is another force that shapes our path, our attachments. We cling to things, to people, to identities, to ideas of who we believe we should be. And in this clinging, we create suffering. The Buddha's wisdom is clear. Attachment leads to suffering. But what does this truly mean? It does not mean we should not love. It does not mean we should not care. It means that to love deeply is to love without possession, without the fear of loss. That to live fully is to embrace the impermanence of all things, rather than grasping at them in desperation. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. But if you hold it gently, it remains. Life is the same. The more we try to control, to force, to demand permanence from the impermanent, the more we suffer. But when we accept that everything comes and goes, just as the tides rise and fall, just as the seasons change, we move with life instead of resisting it. And so, we come to one of the greatest teachings of all, letting go. The Buddha once said, "You only lose what you cling to." Think of the burdens we carry, regret for the past, fear of the future, anger toward those who have wronged us, expectations of how life should be. These things weigh upon us like stones in a sack, yet we continue to carry them, convinced they are part of us, but they are not. To let go is not to forget. It is not to erase. It is simply to release the grip we have on things that no longer serve us. A traveler once asked the Buddha, "How do I find peace?" The Buddha handed him a cup of water. "Hold this," he said. The traveler held the cup. An hour passed. His arm began to ache. Another hour passed. His fingers trembled. "Master," the traveler finally said, "this is painful." The Buddha smiled. "Then why do you not put it down?" The traveler hesitated. He had been holding on to it for so long, it had begun to feel like part of him. The Buddha spoke again. "This is how suffering works. You carry pain, resentment, expectations, believing you must, but nothing forces you to hold them. You only suffer because you refuse to let go." The traveler stared at the cup in his hands, and then finally he placed it down. Relief flooded his body. He laughed, for he had made it so complicated when the answer had been so simple. To let go is to free yourself. Not from life, not from love, not from responsibility, but from the illusion that you must carry the weight of things that no longer serve you. And so the path becomes clearer, not one of struggle, not one of resistance, but one of trust. Trust in life, trust in yourself. Trust that no matter what comes and goes, you are already whole. The sun rises without asking if the night will return. The river flows without demanding that the land stays the same. And yet, human beings resist the natural rhythm of life, clinging to the past, fearing the future, forgetting that peace is found not in control, but in surrender. The Buddha's teachings remind us that suffering is not in the event, but in the mind's reaction to it. Pain may come, but suffering is a choice. We suffer when we resist reality, when we refuse to accept what is, when we fight against what cannot be changed. And in this resistance, we create turmoil within ourselves, as if trying to hold back the ocean with our bare hands. But what if, instead of resisting, we allowed ourselves to flow? The Buddha once told his disciples, "Nothing can harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded. Think of the mind as a room. If it is cluttered with anger, fear, regret, then there is no space for peace to enter. But when we clear away what no longer serves us, when we make space within ourselves, we discover that peace was never outside of us. It was only waiting to be uncovered." One of the greatest obstacles to this peace is expectation. We move through life with ideas of how things should be, how people should treat us, how circumstances should unfold, how happiness should look. But the world does not bend to our desires. People act as they will. Situations shift without warning, and when reality does not meet our expectations, we suffer. But what if we let go of expectation? What if instead of demanding that life unfold according to our plans, we allowed it to unfold as it must? A man once approached the Buddha and asked, "Master, how can I find happiness?" The Buddha handed him a cup of tea and poured until it was full, but he did not stop. The tea overflowed, spilling onto the table. The man gasped, "Master, it is too full. It cannot hold any more." The Buddha smiled. "And so it is with your mind," he said. "You fill it with expectations, with desires, with attachments. But when life does not match what you expect, you overflow with frustration. To find peace, you must first empty your cup." The man looked at his tea and understood. Expectation is not the path to happiness, it is the path to disappointment. But when we release expectation, we make space for what is. We begin to see life not as something to control, but as something to experience. And in that experience we find joy, even in the simplest moments. Yet, to truly walk this path, we must also learn another great lesson: patience. The Buddha once said, "A jug fills drop by drop." We live in a world that demands instant results. We seek quick answers, immediate gratification, fast solutions. But wisdom, growth, peace, these do not come in a single moment. They come slowly, like the rising sun, like the blooming of a flower, like the filling of a jug. A farmer does not plant a seed and demand that it become a tree overnight. He tends to it, waters it, allows the seasons to do their work. He does not rush the process, because he understands that growth takes time. And so it is with us. Every step we take on this path is a drop in the jug. Every moment of awareness, every act of kindness, every time we choose peace over anger, patience over frustration, presence over distraction, we are filling the jug of our being. And one day, without realizing it, the jug overflows, not with struggle, not with resistance, but with peace. Because peace is not found in chasing, it is found in allowing, in trusting, in knowing that everything unfolds in its own time. A seed does not resist the soil that covers it. It does not question the darkness beneath the earth or fight against the rain that soaks into its roots. It simply trusts. It trusts that the sun will find it. It trusts that, in time, it will grow. But human beings have forgotten this trust. We grasp at certainty, at control, at the illusion that we can shape the world to fit our desires. And when life moves in ways we do not expect, we struggle, we resist, we suffer. The Buddha once said, "The root of suffering is attachment." We attach to people, to outcomes, to identities, to the idea that things must be a certain way for us to be happy. And in that attachment, we trap ourselves. We tie our peace to things that are impermanent, and when they change, as all things do, we feel lost. But peace is not something that can be held. It is something that is found in letting go. Imagine standing in a river, holding a leaf in your palm. The water moves swiftly, trying to carry it away, but you grip it tightly, unwilling to release it. Your hand grows tired. The pressure against your fingers becomes painful. And then, finally, you open your hand. The leaf drifts away, and in that moment, the struggle ends. This is how letting go feels. It is not loss, it is freedom. But freedom cannot be found in the mind alone. It must also be lived. And to live freely, we must release another great illusion, the illusion of control. We move through life believing we can control what happens, that if we plan enough, work enough, think enough, we can shape the world to fit our wishes. But the Buddha reminds us, you cannot control the results, only your actions. A fisherman cannot command the sea to give him fish. A farmer cannot order the clouds to bring rain. But they do not stop casting their nets, nor do they stop planting their seeds. They act without clinging to the outcome. This is the path of true peace. To do what we must, to give our best, but to release the expectation that life will unfold according to our wishes. To say, I will love, even if love is not returned. To say, I will be kind, even if kindness is not given back. To say, I will give my effort, even if the reward does not come in the way I expect. Because peace is not found in getting what we want. It is found in knowing that we do not need to. But the greatest test of this wisdom comes not in easy moments, but in hardship. When we lose something dear, when life takes a turn we did not foresee, when pain finds us, as it inevitably does. The Buddha once taught, pain is certain, but suffering is optional. This does not mean we should not feel sadness, grief, or loss. These are natural human emotions. But suffering is when we refuse to accept what is, when we replay the past again and again, refusing to move forward, when we demand that life be different from what it is. A broken cup cannot be unbroken, a fallen leaf cannot return to the branch, and yet we hold on to these things in our minds, as if our sorrow will bring them back. But healing begins the moment we release the fight. To say, this has happened. I do not need to resist it. I only need to move forward. Like the river that does not stop flowing, even when it meets a rock. Like the tree that does not mourn the leaves it sheds in autumn. Like the sun that does not weep for the night. Life moves, and so must we. And in that movement, we find the freedom we have always sought, not by holding on, but by letting go. The wind does not ask where it must go. The river does not seek permission to flow. The clouds do not question when they will dissolve. Nature moves without hesitation, without resistance, without the burden of questioning its own existence. And yet, human beings struggle. We hold on to the past as if it can be rewritten. We fear the future as if worrying will change it. We stand in the present, torn between what was and what could be, unable to fully embrace what is. The Buddha once said, do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. In this teaching lies the essence of true peace. The past is but a memory, a collection of moments that no longer exist except in the mind. The future is an illusion, a world that has not yet arrived. And yet we spend our days caught between them, missing the only moment that is real, this one. Imagine a traveler walking a great path, carrying two heavy sacks, one filled with stones of the past, the other with the weight of tomorrow. He stumbles, exhausted, his steps unsteady, and yet, when told to put them down, he refuses. How can I let go? He asks. This is who I am. But the weight is not who he is. It is simply what he carries, and so it is with all of us. We believe our past defines us, that our pain shapes us, that our regrets are chains we must wear forever. But we are not our past. We are not our mistakes. We are not the fears we have of what is to come. We are only this moment, and in this moment, we are free. But freedom is something we must choose. It does not come from the world. It does not come from possessions, from recognition, from achievement. It comes from within. The Buddha reminds us, it is better to conquer yourself than to win 1,000 battles. To conquer oneself is not to suppress, but to understand. To see anger, fear, doubt, not as enemies but as passing visitors. To welcome them, to acknowledge them, and to let them go without attachment. A man once asked the Buddha, "How do I find peace?" The Buddha took a stick and drew a crooked line in the sand. "Do you see this?" he asked. The man nodded. Without touching the first line, the Buddha drew another beside it, longer, straighter. The first line had not changed, but beside the second, it now looked smaller. "This is how peace is found," the Buddha said, "not by erasing the past, but by making the present greater." The man understood. We do not need to change the past. We only need to live so fully in the present that the past no longer holds power over us. And so the path becomes clearer. Not one of struggle, not one of fear, but one of trust. Trust in life, trust in change. Trust that whatever has been, whatever will be, this moment is enough. Because in the end, peace is not something we find. It is something we become. A bird does not ask the sky if it will hold its wings. It simply flies. A flame does not wonder if it is bright enough. It simply burns. The tree does not question whether it will grow. It reaches for the sun without hesitation, without doubt. And yet, human beings hesitate. We doubt our steps. We question our worth. We look at our reflection and wonder if we are enough. We wait for permission to live fully, as if the world must first approve of our existence. The Buddha once said, "You, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." But we are often our own harshest critics. We carry our failures like scars, replaying them in our minds, convincing ourselves that we are not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough. But what if we treated ourselves as we would a dear friend? If a loved one came to us, burdened with sorrow, would we not offer kindness? If they stumbled, would we condemn them, or would we extend a hand to help them rise? And yet when it is ourselves, we show no such mercy. Why do we believe that compassion is for others, but not for the person in the mirror? To truly walk the path of peace, we must first learn to be kind to ourselves, not through arrogance, not through false confidence, but through gentle acceptance. To say, "I am not perfect, but I am growing." To say, "I have made mistakes, but I am learning." To say, "I am worthy," simply because I exist. Self-compassion is not indulgence. It is not an excuse to remain unchanged. It is the foundation upon which all growth is built. A tree with deep roots stands firm in the storm, not because it resists the wind, but because it is grounded. But self-kindness alone is not enough. The Buddha reminds us, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule. There will always be those who hurt us, people who misunderstand, who betray, who take more than they give. It is easy to hold on to resentment, to carry anger as if it were a shield. But anger does not protect. It only weighs us down. Forgiveness is not about excusing harm. It is not about allowing others to hurt us again. It is about freeing ourselves from the prison of bitterness. Imagine holding a burning coal, intending to throw it at another. Who burns first? To forgive is not to say, "What happened was right." It is to say, I will not let this pain control me any longer. It is a gift we give ourselves. But even as we release anger, we must also release another great burden, the illusion of permanence. The Buddha once said, "Everything changes. Nothing remains without change." We fear loss. We try to hold on to people, onto moments, onto things, as if they can last forever. But nothing in this world is truly ours. Not our bodies, not our possessions, not even the people we love. Everything is borrowed. And yet, knowing this, can we still love fully? Can we still embrace each moment, not in fear of its end, but in gratitude for its presence? A flower does not bloom forever, yet its beauty is no less real. A song does not play endlessly, yet its melody still lingers in our hearts. A moment does not last, but the memory of its warmth stays with us. To accept impermanence is not to love less. It is to love deeper. It is to hold each person as if it is the last time, to speak each word as if it will never be spoken again, to wake each morning as if it is a gift, because it is. And when the time comes to let go, we do not cling. We do not mourn what was. We simply bow to life, grateful for all it has given, for this is the way of peace, not grasping, not fearing, simply living. A river does not resist the rocks in its path. It moves around them, over them, shaping the land not by force, but by persistence. It does not ask why the rocks exist. It does not stop to complain about their presence. It simply flows. And so must we. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." But how many of us look for peace in the world? We think, if only I had more money, I would be happy. If only they understood me, I would feel at peace. If only life had been different, I would be content. But the world is a restless ocean, ever-changing, unpredictable. If our peace depends on the world being perfect, then we will never know peace at all. True peace does not come from control. It comes from surrender, to accept what is, to move with life, not against it, to see each difficulty not as a punishment, but as a lesson. A man once asked the Buddha, "Master, how do I stop suffering?" The Buddha handed him a rope. "Hold this," he said. The man grasped the rope in his hands. The Buddha pulled at the other end. The rope tightened, cutting into the man's skin. "Does this hurt?" the Buddha asked. "Yes, Master." "Then let go." The man hesitated. He had been holding it for so long that it felt natural, but finally he opened his fingers. The rope fell away. The pain stopped. The Buddha smiled. Suffering is the same. You hold on to it, though it cuts into you, but nothing forces you to. The man understood, and so must we. We hold on to pain long after the moment has passed. We replay old wounds, feeding them with our thoughts, keeping them alive when they should have been released long ago. But pain is not meant to be carried. It is meant to be learned from. And then it is meant to be let go. But letting go does not mean giving up. It does not mean standing still, allowing life to happen to us. It means learning the art of right action. The Buddha taught, your work is to discover your work, and then with all your heart to give yourself to it. Too often we drift through life, waiting for the right time, waiting for certainty, waiting for everything to align perfectly before we begin. But the river does not wait for the perfect path, it carves one. The tree does not wait for the perfect season, it grows in whatever soil it finds. We are not here to wait, we are here to live, to act, to move toward what calls to us, even if the way is unclear. Because clarity does not come from thinking, it comes from doing. A sculptor does not begin with a perfect statue in his mind. He begins with a rough block of stone. With each strike of the chisel, the form reveals itself. And so it is with life. You do not need to know the whole path. You only need to take the next step. And as you do, something changes. Not the world, not fate, but you. You become the sculptor of your own life. You become the river, shaping your own course. You become free. Because true freedom is not in waiting for life to be easy. It is in knowing that no matter what comes, you will keep moving. And in that movement, you will find peace. Not by seeking it, but by becoming it. The sky does not ask the clouds to stay. The ocean does not cling to the waves it creates. The tree does not demand that its leaves never fall. Everything in nature exists in a state of allowing, accepting the coming and going of all things. But humans resist. We resist change. We resist endings. We resist anything that does not fit our desires. The Buddha once said, "The trouble is you think you have time. We move through life as if it will last forever. We put off joy, delay forgiveness, postpone the things that truly matter. We say, one day I will live fully." But when will that day come? If we are not careful, we will spend our whole lives waiting for the right moment, waiting for certainty, waiting for happiness to find us. But life does not wait. The river does not stop flowing because we hesitate at its edge. The sun does not pause its rise because we are not ready for the morning. Life moves with or without us. And so we must ask ourselves, are we truly living or are we merely existing? The difference is not in what we do, but in how we do it. To live fully does not mean to chase excitement or to constantly seek more. It means to be present, to taste each sip of tea, to feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, to listen, truly listen when another speaks, to breathe, not just to survive, but to feel alive. A master once asked his students, "When does life begin?" One said, "At birth." Another said, "When we find our purpose." A third said, "When we fall in love." The master shook his head and smiled. "Life begins," he said, "the moment you realize you are already living." This is the truth we forget. We look to the future for meaning, but meaning is already here, in this breath, in this moment. And yet, even as we embrace life, we must also embrace another great lesson, the lesson of non-attachment. The Buddha reminds us, you only lose what you cling to. We suffer not because things change, but because we expect them not to. We attach to people, believing they will always stay. We attach to identities, fearing who we will be without them. We attach to ideas, refusing to see that truth is always evolving. But life is like a flowing river, forever changing, never the same. To cling is to fight the current. To let go is to move with it. Letting go does not mean not caring. It does not mean being indifferent. It means loving fully without fear. It means giving without expectation. It means trusting that what is meant to stay will stay, and what must go will go. And in that trust we find freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from suffering, freedom to live here, now, without waiting, because this moment is all we have. And it is enough. Life is an unfolding, a constant movement from one moment to the next, never pausing, never repeating. And yet, we live as though time waits for us, as though the days we let slip through our fingers will return when we are ready for them. We tell ourselves that tomorrow will be different, that one day we will finally be at peace, finally be happy, finally be free from worry. But tomorrow is not promised, and peace is not something that arrives with perfect circumstances. It is something we cultivate, something we choose, something that exists not in a distant future, but in the quiet simplicity of now. The Buddha's words remind us that all conditioned things are impermanent, that nothing we cling to can remain unchanged, that all we truly have is this fleeting moment before it too dissolves into memory. Yet instead of embracing impermanence, we resist it. We hold on to things as if they define us, Fearing that to lose them would be to lose ourselves, we cling to relationships, to status, to identities that no longer fit, to beliefs that once served us but have now become chains. We convince ourselves that without these things we will be incomplete. But what if completeness was never something external? What if, instead of looking outside ourselves for fulfillment, we turned inward and found that nothing was ever missing? The Buddha once said, "It is not what you have or who you are or where you are or what you are doing that makes you happy or unhappy. It is what you think about it. Happiness is not a destination, not a reward we receive once life falls into place. It is a way of seeing, a shift in perception, a recognition that nothing outside of us has the power to give or take away our inner peace." Yet, despite knowing this, we continue to chasing wealth, chasing love, chasing approval, believing that once we have enough of something, we will be whole. But the nature of desire is endless. The more we feed it, the hungrier it becomes. A person who has little believes that wealth will bring them peace, but the one who has wealth often finds themselves in greater turmoil, now burdened with the fear of losing what they have gained. A person who is alone believes love will complete them, but the one who finds love often discovers that no external relationship can heal the wounds that must be mended within. No matter what we attain, the mind always finds something else to chase, something else to believe it needs before contentment can begin. But what if we stopped running? What if, instead of reaching for more, we simply learned to be? The river does not wish to be the mountain. The sky does not envy the earth. The wind does not question where it should go. Everything in nature exists in harmony with itself, needing nothing more than what it already is. And yet, we look at ourselves and see only what is lacking. We look at our lives and see only what is missing. We compare, we judge, we measure our worth by standards that were never ours to begin with. But the Buddha's wisdom offers a path out of this endless dissatisfaction. Health is the greatest gift, contentment the greatest wealth, faithfulness the best relationship. In these words, we are reminded that true wealth is not in what we possess, but in our ability to find contentment in the simplest things. A quiet morning, a shared smile, a moment of stillness beneath the sky. These are the riches that no one can take from us. But contentment requires presence. It requires the ability to fully live where we are, not lost in thoughts of what could be or what was. And yet, the mind is rarely still. It wanders to the past, reliving moments long gone, carrying regrets like heavy stones. It rushes to the future, filling itself with worries that have not yet come to pass. It distracts itself, always searching, always restless, always seeking something beyond what is already here. But the past is unchangeable, and the future is uncertain. The only place where life truly exists is in this moment. The Buddha teaches us, when you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. To see the world in this way is to move through life unburdened. It is to wake in the morning and be grateful for the breath that fills your lungs. It is to walk without hurry, knowing there is nowhere to reach but here. It is to love without fear, knowing that love does not need guarantees to be real. It is to trust that even in loss, even in change, even in the moments that challenge us, there is something deeper,